Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I must apologize I am not there in person. I'm deeply disappointed, in fact, that I can't share the one-to-one experience in the round of AFM 25 in Budapest. It's unfortunate. I was ill last week. This is really the first day I've been feeling remotely human once again. For those of you who think that I do feel human at any point in time. Nonetheless, it's a joy to be able to commune with you by video. I realize that I am the second keynote speaker during the course of this meeting. And let me say, it's a real honor at any point in time to follow in the footsteps of that great man, Professor Dr. Richard Sandor. He really is a true visionary, a true luminary, and a great student of markets, ladies and gentlemen. And that keynote that he gave us yesterday morning was spectacular. Absolutely brilliant resume of lots of information about the world of financial markets, past, present, and future. I'm not going to try and tread on his toes. In fact, I would just like to say I echo everything that he was saying. But nonetheless, I mean, in my topic, AFM 25 years on emerging markets, 25 years forward, I want to talk about a few other themes overall. And obviously, one of the things that Richard was talking about yesterday was the different decades and how they worked. And I suppose one thing that struck me was how in the 1970s, whether you were on the west or the east side of the Berlin Wall, it was nonetheless a rather bleak time. We had that report, The Limits to Growth, which told us that, well, we were going to be boxed in. And nothing, ladies and gentlemen, has proven to be more inaccurate. And in that sense, I suppose one lesson we've learned from our history of the AFM going 25 years back and looking 25 years forward is the simple reality that when the groupthink grabs us and lots of people manage to get together and tell us what's going to be the future, they're pretty poor at working out what it's going to be. And indeed, if we were to sit and look at the way that this forum has advanced over those 25 years, well, first of all, I think it's fair to say that the early years of various meetings in different halls, particularly around Eastern Europe, I mean, the 1990s is a decade all the way from the round table in Poland, which ultimately kicked off the process where perestroika ran out of control, glasnost ran out of control, and thank the Lord, we ended up with freedom, liberty, and the opportunity for the Eastern European markets to come through once again as people were freed. I suppose one lesson we could probably draw from that was there's a great deal less polyester around 25 years on than there was during the course of the 1990s, when it still seemed to be the suit material of choice. Because I suppose the problem is that supply lines do take a long time to change in so many different ways. It was an incredible criteria at the emerging stages in, say, 1998, when this organization was formed, to look at what was the base, the relationship to those different markets. And of course, it was a very heavily physical, commodity-driven enterprise. And of one thing that we have to say going forward at all points in time is we can never lose the understanding, the core base of linking our markets to those forms of physical commodity. And I suppose in some ways that's rather appropriate at which we're celebrating this week. I mean, yesterday was the 6th of June, the great date of D-Day, at point in time when Europe as a whole was liberated once again, or at least ultimately the Western half. The Eastern half had to go through another few decades of pain under Stalin and various other apparatchiks before things really started to move forward in the 1990s and AFM was founded. And then indeed there is this whole incredible opening during the course of the 1990s, which helped drive the AFM forward through Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and so on. And that's an incredible process because we saw an amazing unleashing of great minds. Not great minds who previously might have been boxed into, well, noble pursuits such as chess and other such interesting aspects of physics and the sciences and so on, but also the opportunity to see minds unleashed on markets. And what do we know about this week? Well, of course, on Monday, the 5th of June, that was the 300th anniversary of the birth of really the man who in many ways, shapes and form is responsible for oh so much of what has gone on around us, which is, of course, Adam Smith, the father of modern free market economics. Subsequently, it has to be said, added to in the cabal of portfolio of learning and information that we've had by the likes of Hayek and the Chicago School, Coase, who indeed Richard was talking about in his speech, and many, many others such as Milton Friedman et al. But nonetheless, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, here we are 300 years on, and in fact, on Monday, we even ran an issue of Exchange Invest, which was entirely using the pithy remarks of Adam Smith 300 years later in order to provide analysis into the current goings on in the world of the bourse business. And very opposite, I thought it was too. Let's face it, Adam Smith, as he said in The Wealth of Nations, man is an animal that makes bargains. No other animal does this. No dog exchanges bones with another. And I have to say, as I've got 6 puppies, which are about to go FOB for anybody who wants to take delivery from our back garden, that is absolutely true. Puppies are useless at exchanging things altogether. Indeed, as he goes on to note, every man lives by exchanging. And that's perhaps a very appropriate message to have across the core of all of our conference, all of our discussions, because surely if there is an advantage to the AFM, that is the one-on-one personal meetings and the opportunity and the ongoing ability of all parties, no matter whether they were in the largest economy that we've ever seen in the history of the world, all the way down to the smallest economies that have graced us, whether they were fast growing or just small by dint of being incredibly small land masses. The simple reality of the advantage of the AFM remains the fact that there is an incredible discourse amongst the practitioners. And that's what I'm really, really deeply sorry that I'm not able to see today. Of course, having said that, it would be lovely to see you, Rod Gravel, at London and catch up. It's been far, far too long. And I hope we'll see you in one of my IPO vids soon. Similarly, Hamish Adurian, welcome to the AFM Club. I'm delighted you could make it to this year's event. Thank you for your participation on the panel. You, amongst many others, are welcome additions to what is an AFM family, as Chris Sturgis was actually talking about during the course of my IPO vid this week, which took place on Tuesday evening. And you can still find IPO-VID on YouTube. Where does this bring us? Well, the most important thing, I think, about an organization that is 25 years old is that it's very easy to start living off past glories. And that is a fatal mistake. The most important thing that you need to have in an association going forward is to have a very clear, and really this is customer service 101, focus, a customer base and a customer focus, and a mission. Whether that mission is the same all along or whether you change it as you go along and you iterate, I personally think every business has to iterate in this day and age, and that's the same for clubs and associations. We can certainly see models within our wonderful world of exchanges and markets of industry associations that are going wrong, and indeed industry associations which at one point in time looked absolutely insurmountable, but ultimately fell apart because they lost their focus on the future. And that is something, if you're going to survive another 20 years and flourish, as we all pray and hope that AFM is going to do, and I will certainly do my utmost if I possibly can behind the scenes to help you achieve your aims going forward, then what we need to see from AFM is a constant, consistent, ongoing vision. What that vision may be today, tomorrow, beyond Tom next 7 days to a month to a year to whatever, is going to change. But the simple reality is, without a vision, the association will fail. And without the members, the association will fail. And indeed, without members giving, it will fail as well. And that, I still think, is the core success of AFM. Above all, and any other industry association that I can mention out there. I'll give an honorable mention, though, I think, to CCP12. I know Raphael is in the audience today. It's great to have you coming and talking about clearinghouses because they remain such a vital thing. And certainly there are pitfalls for the emerging markets of the future because I think relatively few new clearinghouses are going to be built, and therefore we must find a way in order to be able to utilize and cooperate on that existing infrastructure. But nonetheless, CCP12, I applaud you, Raphael. You've built a great association during the course of the last 10 years. It is one that's based on a super enthusiastic membership, and I salute you. And I indeed salute not just the chairman and president of AFM and the past chairman of AFM who've guided the association so well, but I think whoever you are, whether you're Paul or Pat, or indeed the previous chairman, Chris, you'll all agree with me that the one person we really need to salute for being the glue, in many ways, the mother of the entire organization, is Christina Kasha. And that is a very, very vital factor. When you have a passionate secretariat who are doing this because they love it and they enjoy it, not just because of the fact that it happens to be something that pays them a stipend, then you have the basis that you can fabricate further forward a much, much better and more exciting and productive association. So I mentioned earlier on the limits to growth and how that was just fundamentally wrong. And actually, it's interesting to look at other pieces of groupthink. There's a fascinating piece of groupthink that's been around all of my working career. And that is several decades long at this point in time, much older even than the AFM. And that is the idea that the US dollar has actually managed to peak. In fact, actually, it predates even my career. In my childhood in the 1970s, when we were shackled with the limits to growth, which was going to tell us that when we grew up, everything would be pretty awful, and completely missed out technology, the internet, anything to do with anything that actually became remotely digital. Let's face it, they didn't think about low-cost airlines or indeed deregulation and the opportunity and the prosperity that it would bring to all of us, and the great opportunity that would come from the collapse of the Berlin Wall. I always loved the story by my old friend, Professor Jonathan Story, who used to lecture at INSEAD, and Jonathan was lecturing a summer school. And as he did, he went through his summer school, as he'd done for several summers, and said, here are the maths of the Soviet Union. This is the deficit of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union cannot survive. He did that from the early 1980s all the way through to the late 1980s, when he was no longer able to use that material for obvious reasons. And I suppose the most interesting thing is not that people went, wow, that's incredible. Wow, that's the most awesome thing we've heard and it's great news. Oh no, the thing that was incredible, ladies and gentlemen, was that actually people complained. People got up and said, a Fortune 500 CEO went to his summer school and said, that's ridiculous. It's so totally ludicrous. He went off and wrote to the dean and demanded that Jonathan got fired. Fortunately, there's such a thing as academic tenure, so therefore he survived. In fact, the dean thought it was absolutely hilarious and applauded him for managing to so upset the apple cart. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it is very easy to get locked in the box at all points in time, whether we're thinking about exchanges, whatever we're looking at. And one of the things that fascinates me from the 1970s was that was overarching pessimism of what was going on. If we look at this decade, there is a sense of overarching pessimism starting to grasp in a lot of places. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, look at the technology that surrounds us. Look at how little it has so far penetrated into the lives of so many. Look at how, well, this incredible device, you know, this thing that you can use as your computer and it stores messages. You can use it for email. It has your social media on it. You can watch videos on it. You can record videos on it. You can record podcasts on it. Incredibly, it even has a module built into it, which has a telephone inside it. I mean, the extent to which technology goes these days is incredible. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you have more technology in the palm of your hand by the factor of 10, 20, 50, in order to manage to launch, for example, the Apollo missions, they all took place on a fraction of the computing power of whatever smartphone you have in your wallet or purse today. The simple fact is, ladies and gentlemen, if we can harness that technology, even 5%, 10% or more, we can create great prosperity. And the point about everything that essentially Adam Smith was working his way towards all those centuries ago was to understand the fact that prosperity was something that is a shared and wonderful thing that takes place when we have the Holy Trinity of supportive government, a sensible and coherent market. That's us. And the opportunity for people to improve themselves and society around them. The past 25 years of the Association of Futures Markets has been defined by one thing: improvement, self-improvement of the association, of the members of the groups. We arrived 25 years later. We're discussing things over the course of the last couple of days that were barely thought of or talked about 25 years ago. Energy, electricity markets, they were only happening in a few places in America, and they were theoretically happening in Australia in the course of 1998. Carbon markets, which Richard has discussed much more eloquently from his position as truly a father of the carbon market, as well as being the father of the modern futures markets. So many other opportunities surround us, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, there is one thing which is hugely to our advantage. The business model of e-commerce is, in every possible sense, as I will never tire of saying to you, and as I pointed out at my keynote last year in London, it is the exchange. Whether they call it Uber, whether they call it Zamas, whatever that enterprise is, you, the builders of exchanges, the creators, organizers, and maintainers of exchanges, have in your hands, we hold the opportunity to deliver spectacular future profit, prosperity, and therefore a great benefit for everybody in society. There's so much else I could say, but ladies and gentlemen, I just want to end by saying thank you very much for your time. It's really been a pleasure to be with you today, albeit virtually. I am truly very, very sorry that illness stopped me last week from traveling, and that has left me here, admittedly in somewhat of a paradisical idyll, but nonetheless, it lacks one thing: the opportunity to interact with each and every one of you one-to-one. The AFM may have been born in an era of digital markets, but nonetheless, the absolute core benefit of what we're going to see and what's going to come out of this conference, which unfortunately I will not be such a close part of this year, is your interaction. And therefore, I hope you're going to have a wonderful time networking. I wish you all a hugely productive and successful rest of the conference and a safe journey home. And I'll leave you with one pointer. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the AFM. Next year marks the 25th anniversary of a book. It was called Capital Market Revolution. And therein began a fascinating, exciting, and amazing dynamic tale of electronic markets and fintech. My name is Patrick L. Young. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Do please join me via Exchange Invest. Sorry not to be able to catch up with many of our subscribers that are at the meeting this week. I wish you all a very, very successful conference, and here's to 25 more fabulously successful years for the Association of Futures Markets. Thank you for your time and have a great event.